So I talked about this the other week. I threw it out there in the news video. I said, let's do a Q&A. Shoot me your messages. I will answer them. I will talk about them. I will do them on camera as sort of a first time thing. So that's what this video is. I have literally copied and pasted all of the responses that were sent to me onto my iPad. So I have them in front of me so I can read them and let you know my responses. Again, I've got about a half dozen things here, give or take, from about, that many people with, there's multi-layered questions. But if you were one of those people that sent me one of those things, be aware that, yeah, here you go. Putting my money where my mouth is. So let's do this. So question number one was, from my collection, the best game in each of these categories. First up, we had Dungeon Crawl, and that's sort of a different tie. I'm going to go with Cthulhu Death May Die, followed by Madara. And Madara is sort of 1B to 1A right now because I haven't played it much. I haven't been able to dig in. I'm an all-in backer from the first one and the second one. So it's just a question of, can I just get it to the table more? But Cthulhu Death May Die as the best. I can play this with anybody dungeon crawler that I have in my collection. Then I'm just going to go through the categories here. Two-player competitive. Now, this is going to overlap with the abstracts because I do a lot of abstract games. If you would say non-abstract, I mean, that would be a different category, but abstracts, again, as my theme of my channel is, if doesn't matter how good it is if you can't get it played, right? So the two that are going to sort of cross compatibility here are, number one, Hive Pocket. Hive Pocket is a better version of Hive. I mean, it's just more portable. And it's beautiful. You can make an argument that the black and white version is great too, but Hive is the game that I can say most likely in my collection to be around in 100 years, right? That people are still playing. There are strategy guides on how to play Hive high level. And so that's one. The other one, it's very similar in the sense, but I mean, it's talk. There's a reason it's called the beautiful game. Now, again, maybe you can make the argument that it's not as balanced. I guess I've seen some high level talk where they say first player advantage is like 55-45 or 60-40. So it's not as balanced when it comes to that as Hive is. You know what? Play 2 out of 3. Anyway, or 5 out of 7. I don't know. 5 out of 9. That's what it would be. But that's there. Story, again, I'd have to go Madara. I mean, there's plenty of other stuff with stories out there. I haven't played my copies of Pandemic Legacies yet, so I can't tell you if there would be better story from those aspects. And again, a couple of my story games are my campaign games that just haven't been able to get played a ton. So when I get more of those played, that answer, again, your mileage may vary on this one. Best area control game. Best area control game is going to be El Grande. I only have 3 area control games in my collection right now. El Grande is the granddaddy of them all for a reason. It's just fantastic. If somebody picks this up like somebody did Raw with 25th Century Games doing that, this is going to print money as well. I'm surprised, and maybe there's issues with licensing and designer, but I don't know. But this is money waiting to be printed. The only other one I'm going to mention right now is Rumble Nation. Again, I'd say people are printing money if somebody picks this up for North American distribution. It's just a fantastic game in terms of area control. If you have a chance to pick it up, I think I saw one on Reddit the other day. Again, it's hard to import, and so it's worth it. It's my most played area control game, if that tells you anything from that aspect of things. Tile laying game. Now, this one was a little bit tougher. I'm going to go with Isle of Skye, actually. I'm a big fan of the auction mechanic with this, and the craziness that ensues in building your tiles. And these are all of the variable win conditions when you're only using 4 of them per game, just with the base game. Now, close second or third, again, behind that would probably be something along the lines of Babylonia. I recently just played that. I put that out as one of my top games played in April. And again, akin to it, Yellow and Yangtze. But Yellow and Yangtze's biggest difficulty is it's hard to get to the table. It's a more complex strategy. It's more rules overhead. It's a little bit different in terms of how you're placing things. So it's great. It's not going anywhere in my collection, but it can't occupy at least one of the first 2 slots because of those reasons compared to the other ones. Best engine builder, I mean, need I say more? Res Arcana. I mean, again, it's a race. People aren't going to like it. But if you have people that are, again, sort of similar skill level, it's a great game. It's not going to be for everyone because of some of the nuance and some of the engine actually building though, because I think of this game also as one of the games where when people say, oh, the engine gets built and then you never have a chance to run it and you never have a chance to, the game ends before that. Well, this game is the game that you get to run your engine as quickly as best that you can, multiple turns in a row. So, best cooperative game, I mean, is it going to be any question what's my best co-op game? I mean, this is my best co-op game. This is the game that I take out when people haven't played something or they want something slightly different and I don't want to play Pandemic Iberia or something along those lines. Again, as a pure cooperative in the line of Pandemic, never turn this game down. Like, have the expansion, just makes it better. It's hard. New expansion makes it even that much harder. So that's basically the first question. The next question was actually related to this. The World Series of Board Gaming, more as a negative or a positive for the community. I don't know. I mean, it's an intriguing concept in theory. In actuality, it's a smorgasbord of a little bit of everything under the sun, with the games that were chosen and just with the price point to get in. And so that's going to be the question. Is this cash enticing enough for people to go out there? And if you're not familiar, we'll pull up the ring list here just as a quick answer. These are the games that you're seeing here. And this is a huge swing of things, right? You could be heavy on one of these and, again, not akin to or having played any of the rest. And you just might end up, even if you win your respective game, tournament of each individual game, I mean, you could end up with, being the best Brass Birmingham player, strategic Eurogamer at this convention, and then end up in a competition of drafting with Seven Wonders in the next round and just get totally trounced by a bad card draw, right? Or, same thing with Splendor. Can you imagine if you're the best Brass player and then you lose at Splendor? Like, again, the dichotomy of games there, and I guess it, vice versa can happen too. But that's the aspect of things that I just don't know how people are going to feel about. And it'd be almost more interesting if you had sort of, okay, we're going to have these 4 games and there's going to be a smaller prize for this. We're going to have these 4 games, there's going to be a smaller prize for this. These 4 games for a smaller prize of this. And then maybe we'll do a wild card at the end just to see if people want to, winner take all, or not maybe winner take all, but, it's Las Vegas, right? Put a bet on it, So maybe something like that. But again, the tickets themselves to get into these events are relatively higher. Stay and play, $900. Again, this includes 4 nights and 5 days, so that's not too bad. Just one ring event, though, just to get in one event for those games is $250. That's a ton of money. That's a ton of money to put in, and that's why the prize is so much. Now, what is it going to look like in terms of how many people? That's really going to be the question. That's going to be telling after the first one. And then with something like this, the evolution of it, I guess, is going to be really what's telling the most. How does this evolve to meet constructive criticism afterwards in terms of the things that's going to go well and the things that maybe people aren't going to like from that aspect? So honestly, I have no idea at this point. It's an interesting litmus test of things, but I just don't know if competitive board gaming is there. I mean, it is, but not, right? Like, I'm competitive around with people I play with, but like competitive, I don't play board games to be competitive at the same time. And I think a lot of people share that mentality. A much higher percentage in our hobby share that mentality than on the video game side of things. And that is, I think, one of the main differences in those two hobbies and the success maybe of something like this. Next question. Is Arc Nova as good as the Board Game Geek rankings suggest? Well, I have a copy. I haven't played it yet. My game group has canceled the last 2 weeks. I've had no one to play anything with. I've been playing solo or with my wife board games at this point. I had to make sure the phrasing was good there. I don't know. I have a feeling that this is very akin to the other things we've seen rise up the Board Game Geek rankings, not anywhere to this degree, but in terms of, and I'll highlight this portion right here, the weight. Because when you get these heavy games, if they're good, it is a very niche crowd that even plays them in the first place, and it's a very niche crowd that then rates them. And so things are going to be skewed. I mean, if you look at the Board Game Geek Top 100 overall, again, they are skewed towards heavier games in general. Now, I mean, there's plenty of lighter games, but in general, you tend to run heavier. Now, I don't mean heavier overall on the Board Game Geek ranking necessarily, but heavier overall from a general hobbyist. You have Brass, you have Terraforming Mars, again, Gaia Project, Spirit Island. I mean, I love Spirit Island, but that's not a pandemic style co-op game, right? War of the Ring is heavy. Through the Ages, Great Western Trail. Now, many in our hobby aren't going to think Great Western Trail, but if I pull out Great Western Trail for someone who's never played anything before, that is considered heavy. Arc Nova is probably the heaviest of most of these, but they also, I guess maybe I need to define this even further. I think the Board Game Geek Top 100 skews more towards heavier, but also more importantly and more skewed even towards Euro. Maybe that's more of an important distinction. Euro. Now again, not all, but more Euros than not. Now we start to get down lower and we start to see other things, but that's my own personal opinion. You can tell me I'm wrong in the Board Game Geek section. Someone will break down the top 100 and tell me how more of them are, some other kind, but that's my own personal bias right there being explained. Next question. I'm curious what a content creator's communication and relationship looks like with developers and publishers. So we'll pull out this screen for this one so I can, now I don't really have anything Board Game Geek related I can talk about. For the most part, it's random communications. I have email addresses just that you, most of the time, are pulling off of any generic social media website or email address from a publisher's own website, and I send emails to them basically just like any one of you would to get a support question or to ask about something or whatever that may be. And some of them are more responsive and some of them are less responsive. And I've had good enough luck with a few publishers that I have good relationships with. Board Game Tables, Level 99 Games, 25th Century Games. Those are the ones that stick out to me offhand that I've had good back and forth communication with and responsiveness with. Not to say that the others I've interacted with and had haven't. But again, I think everybody, just like in the hobby, when you sit down at a game table, let's say you do it at a convention, right? And you don't know the people there. And you sit down with 4 other people to play a 5-player game. You may jive with 1 or 2 of those people a ton. And you may play a couple more games with them after that because your interests are similar, your overlap, your enthusiasm, your personality. But then there's just others that you'll go, clearly this is not a good click. Clearly this doesn't line up whatsoever. And it's the same thing. Certain publishers like certain people. Certain publishers are looking for certain things. Sorry, Nemesis Games. I forgot you guys too. I have a great relationship with them. I knew I shouldn't have listed any companies because I invariably forget like 1 or 2 and they're gonna be like, we have a good relationship with them. What do we do? No, you know what I'm saying though. But there's been plenty I've contacted too that have never responded. There have plenty have been contacted that have responded but said, hey, thanks, but no thanks. And it's a little bit of everything in between. Again, what's just interesting from my side of things is seeing sometimes who ends up on, say, like a Kickstarter page, right? Companies that I've contacted and said, hey, I would be willing to do something for free. And if you just, let me even just play it. I'm not even asking for a prototype or review copy. Just, get some exposure on my channel and being able to get some people to look at my channel a little bit more and, quid pro quo from that aspect. And then seeing who is on the page in the first place. Again, you guys see it sometimes just as much as I do or just at the same point. Because sometimes it's just like, hey, we don't have anything. Maybe we'll consider you next time. Or maybe, we'll think about you. Or maybe, hey, we're just not interested. Because again, the main thing I've seen is you get people who are passionate or who are interested in your game or type of game in general. Or nowadays we've seen the split there versus the paid stuff. I mean, those seem to be the 2 trends. And I fall on one side of that trend right now. And that's, if that doesn't fit what someone is looking for, you know what? That's okay. That's okay. I think the most important attitude that I've had about this has kept it, more than palatable, more than tolerable, more than, I'm not sure what the term I'm looking for here is, but just kept me in check, from a ego is I'm not entitled to anything. I absolutely am not entitled to anything. It still boggles my mind when people are even willing to talk back to me. And like I said, with those companies that are even, willing to talk to me on a frequent basis. You know, that's what it's like, and it's just your mileage may vary. I know, obviously, some of the bigger channels, I would assume, have plenty of people reach out to them. You know, if you had Alex or Jesse, those guys, Quack and Co, answer this same question, I would argue that they're probably getting spammed in their inbox from people asking them. I mean, I don't really have to guess. I think I know Alex is, you know, in terms of the stuff, just like Tom Vassal. I shouldn't be using them on their first name basis. I don't know any of these people. I've only even communicated with Alex. But I mean, they are getting like over and above, and they're having to discern down. And so people reaching out to them. I've had plenty reach out to me, but I've also been very discerning on, you know, especially some of the smaller games, publishers, indie stuff on crowdfunding, some stuff that's funded and a few things that definitely haven't funded, because, you know, again, I fall in that second category, right? Of things that I want to not want to play, but want to like, you know, and I agree with Rado in that sense that, like, I want to be able to talk about something I have an interest in. Now, I'm not going to say it's only stuff I like, because as I've done these Kickstarter previews, I've found games that, okay, this looked good to me in theory, and then I've played it and I've talked about it and I've said, okay, this is a great game, or this is solid, or hey, you know what, this one just isn't for me. And I think that that's okay too. But I'm trying not to just take anything and say, okay, here's this game. You know? So there you go. A little insight, if that helps at all. A little rambling to go along with it. A little Liegeism right in the middle of the questioning. What's on my shelf of shame? So, you know, what you're seeing right now, I'll give you a pan view. I mean, this is literally like a half office, half like closeted area. So I'm going to zoom out here for a second. So like, this is what you don't see, right? This is, I got a stack of stuff right here. I have two calyxes right behind the camera set up there, and this shelf goes, you know, up higher than you can see. It goes a full shelf higher, and there's actually the bottom shelf here too, as you can see below. So what's on my shelf of shame, right? Okay, I keep track of on my Boardgamegeek profile right here. You can see I keep it under my want to playlist, so I'm actually doing really good. This one's not up to date, 51, because I just got a great package from one of the companies that reached out, and they sent me like half a dozen games of their company. And so it's not up to date on all of that stuff, as well as some of the Kickstarters I've gotten recently, or the, you know, review copies. I actually, you know what? I don't think I have any review copies. That I mostly just Kickstarters that I've gotten recently. And so I keep track of it here. And so this is my want to playlist. And so, I mean, the biggest things on my want to playlist right now, you can see there's a little bit of everything here. War Chest, I've been meaning to get that played. That Time You Killed Me is probably near the top of that list as a whole. And let's see what else is actually at the top of that list right now. I would say That Time You Killed Me. I haven't gotten my Bullet Orange because my wife hates Bullet Orange. And you know what? I'm going to get Ark Nova played. The other combination of things is the Pandemic Legacies. I said I was going to have my wife and I do Pandemic Legacy Season 1. So those are probably at the top of my shelf of shame list right now. Next question, you'll understand why I'm going to this page right now. It's how do you go about selling your games? Where, how much, and do you trade instead? I do a lot of trading. I have tried not to do selling. Selling is a losing issue for most of the time, unless you can get relatively decent price back, or it's an exclusive or deluxe edition. And so I do a lot of the custom searching over here on Boardgamegeek, as well as just going to individual pages, because you can say match any of my collection. You can say just the ones on my trade list. Or if you're like me and you were for a while looking at Ark Nova, I mean, this is how I got Ark Nova, right? I went down here to the Ark Nova page. I went to the for trade, and I literally messaged people on this for trade list, and I said, hey, would you be willing to sell or trade? Do I have anything of interest of trade? What do you think? So that is the number one way that I do it. I was doing it on the Board Game Facebook page, the Board Game Exchange, being one of the largest ones on there. But in case you missed the video, the mod booted me for completely unrelated reasons about my video regarding Board Game Revolution. So I'm not a part of that one anymore. I'd love to sell locally because obviously, I mean, shipping is there. I do also do a little bit over here on the Reddit Board Game Exchange sub. But again, you got to be careful here. I mean, there's no insurance policy, so Board Game Geek is a little bit safer, but you'll find a wider variety more frequently over here too. That's a little bit less nitpicky, because sometimes Board Game Geek users they just don't respond, and people are at least posting here saying I'm trying to get rid of this, so you get a better response rate too here. So there you go. So going back over to Board Game Geek here, what do you look for when on Board Game Geek? I click on stuff that's interesting to me. I keep a wish list just like everybody else on Board Game Geek, and I scroll through my wish list frequently. I try to find people, again, like I said with Ark Nova, that are trading it or possibly selling it. I don't usually buy because, again, shipping kills the cost of getting it used versus new. Because, again, most people are not looking at it from that aspect. Most lay people are, especially when you go back over here to the exchange, they're not really factoring that in. They're just bad about doing that. And you'll find people that are selling for the bare minimum below the new price because they just want to do it locally. And you'll get a lot less success that way. But I mean, you'll save a little bit of money or make a little bit more money, but you also may not get rid of stuff anytime soon or at all, because the main people that may be looking for it might be several states away. How do you plan to play ARCs when it's a 3 to 4 player game? That's a great question. That's a question for future me to teach the 8-year-old how to play a game that complex, right? No, I mean, it's a game where, as I mentioned with Pandemic Legacy, if I can get my wife to be interested, then I realistically only need one other person. And to do it from that aspect would be not inconceivable. It'd still be tough, but I think it would be doable. He said very carefully. But that's also why I'm pruning a lot of my collection, right? That's why I'm, have a big 4 trade list. And my 4 trade list is about 70 games right now. Maybe not that many, but it's been pruning down, maybe 50, similar to my Wanton playlist. And that Wanton playlist, by the way, it said 51 there previously. That includes a bunch of expansions. So my actual Wanton playlist is more like 25 to 30 right now. So because I don't count expansions to base games that I've played. So but that's sort of my plan, right? And that's why I'm trying to keep it down. So if I have less games overall, I'm going to be forced in a good way to be able to get it played in that sense. I don't have a better strategy than that. It's a future me problem, like I said. Speaking of that, and we'll just stay on Ark Nova. I know you don't love the overly complex games because they're hard to get to the table consistently. So what's the point where it gets to be too much for you? That's a great question. I don't know. I don't know. It's sort of like, now that I said this in another video, I've played a couple hundred games, right? And so I can start to look at gameplay. I can start to look at rule books. I can start to look at what a game has in terms of mechanisms, and I can start to get a good sense of what sort of complexity, strategery is this game going to have. And it's sort of like that old saying that they have thrown around. I'm not going to tell you what's in relationship to. You can Google that, but you'll know it if you see it, right? You know it when you see it. And I've gotten good at saying, I know it when I see it. This is too much for me. Versus, you know what? I'm also trying to expand my horizons. Because I think anything, I guess I will put this one constraint on it. If it's going to be more than about an 1.5 to 2 hour game, it's probably not going to fit well in my collection right now. Unless it is, say, like a crawl game, an engagement game, a social game, or something along those lines, or the exception to the rule being something like Uprising, Curse of the Last Emperor, right? Where the mechanics are all exactly what we know and do and love, but it's just an overall longer game. If it doesn't fit those parameters exactly, and again, that's the exception to the rule, it's probably not going to be a great fit. I mean, most of my game nights are once a week, once every other week with other people, and we play for anywhere between 2 to 3 hours. So that often turns into 1 or 2 games. Maybe 3 or 4 if we play small, quick filler games, which again, I'm completely okay with. I got plenty of those too. But I'm also very discerning on those. And I like playing 1 or 2 games as well in a night. And sometimes if, we've had nights where it's a slog and I'm the one teaching. Let me be very clear. You saw the games earlier. I'm the one teaching. So I have that overhead burden on me as well. So it's not just the game itself. It's the, how do I teach it to other people in addition to that? And so that's another barrier. How complex is the teach going to be? I mean, it's one thing if everybody is at their home and they watch a root how to play and they take their own specific faction, or everyone looks at, we'll go with Great Western Trail for that example again, and everyone knows how to play and can watch a 25-minute video on how to play and come ready to play, right? But if I have to explain all four factions and asymmetries and tactics, or I have to explain the nuances of something like Brass Birmingham, Spirit Island is about the depth of, complexity that you can explain in a shorter time. Because also, again, I'm not playing with people who are having collections like I do. I'm playing with people who have maybe a couple or none. And, I'm the person that they play with the most. And I'm completely okay with that. But again, it's knowing your audience too. What's more frustrating? Oh, this is going, I did not plan this. What's more frustrating, a bad teach of a game you don't know, or teaching a group and they blame you for forgetting something you taught them? It's a bad teach of a game you don't know. As the teacher, I've been on both sides of this question. Teaching poorly, my first attempt at teaching other people how to play Spirit Island without understanding how to play. And then I've also been on the other side where forgetting not massive, but pretty good-sized rules in certain games that change the dynamic of the game in the first place. And again, playing with other people, I mean, it's knowing your people. And at this point, with the people I've played with, they know that, hey, look, I'm doing all of this work. And there's also just some graciousness to go along with that, right? Some graciousness to say, he's doing all the work. And if he forgets something, he probably forgot it for himself too. So we're all equal playing field regardless. So that's definitely there. Last one here, and we'll just pull up to the big screen. Are you a fan of flavor text, or do you prefer language independent games? Now, I love language independent games. I mean, you'd seen me talk earlier about abstracts, and those are language independent, right? I love the idea of flavor text. However, I've found myself shorter and shorter on the willingness to do the flavor text and skipping over it. I mean, I remember Kingdoms Forlorn, that video I put out earlier in the year. I mean, there's a lot of flavor text, and I read it, but I read it silently as I skimmed it and gave the highlights to the other people I was playing with, because it's not a universal thing either by any means. So again, it's a balancing act. I love a little bit of pun flavor text too. I mean, the loop, for example, the flavor text there, or the, not really flavor text, but the wink, wink, nod, nod sort of thing. It's great, especially in the rule book there. So that sort of thing I have no problem with. It's moderation, just like anything else. Games owned, last one. Owned to play again soon. Owned to play again soon. Again, I have too many new ones that I'm still trying to get to the table, as my year-end goal was to try and get almost everything off of my shelf of shame played. But we've played 3 games of Babylonia recently. That has been a big hit. That's been a great game. I will never turn down a loop game, because that's just, everyone knows how to play that now. I will never turn down a game of Spirit Island. I have not played Spirit Island enough. I haven't even cracked Jagged Edge, which is sitting up there from Kickstarter yet. I've opened it and looked through it and stuff, but I haven't been able to play any of the spirits because I'm still having a lot of fun with some of the spirits just in the base game and the promo packs. So let's see what else. The other one is Exceed. I just haven't gotten to play enough Exceed. I wish I had a dedicated partner to play Exceed, or even Star Wars Destiny with, to do a little bit more deck customization with my 8-year-old. So I'm hoping I'll be able to get that going from that side of things. So we'll see how that happens. I don't have high hopes. I'm setting the bar low on that one, but there you go. That is it. That is the Q&A for this week, this month, this time around. I'm just going to collect them. If you want to send some stuff in, let me know. It's me rambling, answering questions off the top of my head, completely not really planned or thought out, but, again, just like I do everything else on this channel. So if you like this, smash the like, subscribe, blah, 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 Patreon below, and let me know what else you want to see or hear or ask. So, I read every comment on the channel. So, and the email is down below too if you want to send me it that way. A little bit of everything. Stay classy. That was interesting. Interesting. I like it. Have a great day.